اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، اللهم ربنا لك الحمد والشكر كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك منك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair for making the time to come on Saturday to attend this session, inshallah. We are continuing on the topic of the diseases of the heart and some of the cures, inshallah. And tonight we will talk about the disease of the heart of relying on other than Allah. Relying on other than Allah. And that is tawakkul on ghayrullah, on other than Allah Ta'ala. And in order to understand what that means, it's important to understand what tawakkul means. So tonight we'll talk about tawakkul, the true meaning of tawakkul, reliance on Allah Azza wa Jal. What does that mean? How do we go about relying on Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? Is reliance on Allah Ta'ala means that we abandon this world, the means that Allah gave us in this world, the asbab, and when and to what extent do we rely on the means that Allah gave us, and to what extent do we rely on Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, but also what are the benefits of relying on Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. First and foremost, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala tells us in the Quran by way of command, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, and rely on the one who is ever living and does not die, means Allah Azza wa Jal. And rationally, if you were to think about that, I mean, that makes a lot of sense as to why we should only rely on Him, Allah Azza wa Jal, because He's telling us He's Al-Hayy, He's the ever living, الذي لا يموت, and He does not die. And if you were to extrapolate from that, the opposite of that means that anything else or anybody else that you rely upon, know that they are not ever living and know that they will die. And so your reliance on anything, on anybody other than Allah, will die with them also. But if your reliance is only on Al-Hayy, الذي لا يموت, Al-Hayy, the living, Allah Azza wa Jal, who never dies, then your reliance is perpetual, and it'll benefit you in this world and the next world. But also Allah Azza wa Jal commands in the Quran, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْعَزِيزِ الرَّحِيمِ, and rely on Al-Aziz is Allah Azza wa Jal, and Ar-Rahim, the most compassionate. الَّذِي يَرَاكَ حِينَ تَقُومُ, because it is He who sees you when you rise up in the morning. وَتَقَلُّبَكَ فِي السَّاجِدِينَ, it is Allah Ta'ala who sees you when you're prostrating and you're bowing before Him. إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ, and it is He who is the all-hearing, He's the all-knowing. So it's as if Allah Ta'ala is trying to, in a sense, convince you why you should rely on Him only. That it is only He who sees you all the time, He hears you all the time, He sees you when you wake up, He sees you when you go to bed, He sees you when you prostrate, and there is nothing, there's nobody better to rely upon except Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So what is the meaning of tawakkul? The word in Arabic is tawakkul, which appears in the Quran frequently. Tawakkul is, in its linguistic sense, is al-i'timadu ala al-ghayri fi amrin ma. It is to rely on anybody for anything, for any particular matter. So relying on somebody for something. So you may rely on your boss, for instance, for pay rise, for instance. So reliance on somebody for something. But from a dini perspective, from a jurisprudential, theological perspective, it means صدق اعتماد القلب على الله تعالى في استجلاب المصالح ودفع المضار من أمور الدنيا والآخرة. It means this true reliance of the heart on Allah Azza wa Jal for all things of benefit for us in dunya and akhirah, and to rely truly on Allah, who is able to save us from all harm that may come upon us in this world and the next world. Right, so tawakkul, therefore, is a state of the heart. And that's why it's related directly to the heart. Tawakkul is related to the heart. And so the sidq al-qalb, the truthfulness of the heart in its reliance on Allah Azza wa Jal. And you can only rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more you know Allah Azza wa Jal, the more you will rely on Allah Azza wa Jal. And that's why in the previous verses, every time Allah Ta'ala says, and rely on Allah, He told us about Himself, about His attributes, and about His qualities. The more you know those about Allah, the more you will rely on Allah. You will come to a stage that you cannot rely but on Allah Azza wa Jal. When you know Him, when you recognize His greatness subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know that He's as-sami', that He's the all-hearing, He's al-alim, He's the all-knowing. الذي يراك في الساجدين. It is Allah who He sees you when you're prostrating, and so on. الجرجاني said, التوكل هو الثقة بما عند الله واليأس عما في أيدي الناس. Another great scholar said, tawakkul is to have confidence in what Allah has and what He can give. To have that confidence that I'm dealing with Allah. To have that confidence that I'm dealing with Allah Azza wa Jal, and to lose hope in what is in the hands of the creation. Right? Now we'll explain later, it doesn't mean now we abandon all connections with the creation, and we abandon, there is no harm in seeking assistance from somebody who can offer assistance. But that is not the point. That's not what we are saying here. It's even if you seek assistance from any of the creation of Allah, your reliance is not on this creation of Allah, but the reliance is ultimately on Allah Ta'ala, because the ultimate outcome is always with Allah. It's like saying somebody who is ill and you ask them to take medicine. Now, taking of medication is a sunnah that you have to do because we have been asked to. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, ما أنزل الله من داء إلا وأنزل معه دواء. Allah did not send down a disease, but sent with it a cure. فَتَدَاوَوْا يَا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ. So servants of Allah, go and seek cure. Right? So taking of medicine, or medication in this case, is a sunnah that you are required to do. And it becomes in fact compulsory if not taking medicine is going to lead to the destruction of your life. And so the taking of medication can become compulsory on a person who, without medication, may end up losing their life. Or if it doesn't lead to the loss of life, then the taking of medication at the very least is a sunnah. Because taking of medication is a means. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this world as a world of means and effect. Means in Arabic is asbab. And Allah created this world, and He created the means also. And in fact, He commanded us to make use of these means. But when you take use of these means, your reliance is not on the means. You take the medicine, but your reliance is not on the medicine. Because how many a sick person took all the medication, but they did not cure? Right? How many a person who took the wrong medicine and maybe they were cured? So taking of means does not contradict reliance on Allah. But what it means is that you take the means which Allah created, but your trust is not on the means, but your trust is on the Rabb, the Lord of these means. Right? It's all right. So therefore the first principle that we need to understand from an Islamic perspective is that at-tawakkul la yunafi akhdh al-asbab. Relying on Allah and taking worldly halal means are not contradictory. Right? And the example I gave is of medicine. Some people misunderstand tawakkul, reliance on Allah. The alternate word in Arabic is tawakkul. There is tawakkul, which means true reliance. Tawakkul is false reliance. False reliance is when you say, I trust in Allah and He will do everything for me, but you don't make the effort. You don't take the means. That's false reliance. Example. When you jump in your car to drive, you switch the car on and you make sure there is fuel in the car. Let's imagine if the needle is on empty. And the light comes on when you still have about 60 kilometers to go. The light comes on. And we often say, it'll make it, right? It'll make it. We keep going, right? But it's 60 kilometers only. But if you now decide to travel 200 kilometers, and then you will say, it's on empty, but Allah will take me there because I have reliance on Allah. That's false reliance, because you're not using the means that He has given you in the first instance. You fill the car up, and then you say, I will drive the distance, and I rely on Allah to make me get there. And that reliance means He could save you from an incident or an accident or whatever. That is reliance, because they don't contradict each other. Or you jump in the car and you blindfold yourself and you say, I rely on Allah and I'm just going to drive. And because I have such faith on Allah, He will take me to Marian Mosque blindfolded. Now that's not reliance, that's foolishness. Correct? Why? Because Allah gave you means. In this case, the means are the eyes. And in fact, what the ulama say, what the scholars say, by not taking those means which Allah gave you, you are essentially going against the wisdom of Allah, who in the first instance gave you these means for a reason. Right? So by not utilizing those means, you're actually going against the wisdom of Allah Azza wa Jal. Another example, because analogies are the best way sometimes to explain complicated issues. You just saw me drink now, right? Why? Because I was thirsty. But if I'm talking about reliance, and because I'm speaking about it, the assumption is that my reliance on Allah might be higher than yours, and so I should have really sat there and not used my hand to drink. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should have given me that drink. Now that's false reliance. Allah gave me this hand to use it. So it's a means, it's a sabab. It's a means to be used in the rightful way. And in this case, I used it to drink. But my reliance is not on the water that is going to quench my thirst. Allah gave the water the quality to quench the thirst, But also water can make people drown. And so the heart should truly and sincerely be reliant on Allah Azza wa Jal on all things that we do. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change the nature of the means that He has created. Of course, there are universal laws that Allah has created, as there are Dini laws, Sharia laws, there are universal laws. Of Allah's universal laws, for example, are the laws of gravity. But the laws of gravity work on this earth. Allah has other planets where the law of gravity does not even operate. But also a time might come where the laws of gravity might not work. Why? Because Allah is ultimately in control of all the means and the asbab. Are you following? Right? So another example perhaps is your ears, the hearing that Allah has given you. You could now plug your ears and say, I rely on Allah to make me understand what Brother Abdullah is saying by not hearing what he says. I'm just going to look at his lips. And Allah is going to, and that's, so by nullifying or by not taking the halal means, because taking halal means does not contradict reliance on Allah. Taking haram means and saying you rely on Allah are contradictory. You don't take haram means. Why? Because your belief is Allah Ta'ala is the doer, and through halal Allah will give me. But your rizq could come through haram, but it means it's haram in itself. Some examples the scholars they give some very wise examples. If you have chickens, we have 4 chickens and we're very proud. We have 4 chickens. They give us 4 eggs every day, right? So they're quite funny actually. So chickens, you can go and feed them. You can put all their rizq, all their food in a bowl and just put it right there. And so all their sustenance has come at once. Whoa, right, at once, and they just come to it. They don't have to make any effort, but eat it from there. Or the same quantity and the same food we can take and scatter it. Now, it hasn't changed in quantity or in quality, but it's been scattered in this case, which means it'll take them longer to acquire. But by the end, they would have acquired exactly the same quantity or that which has been prescribed for them anyway. Had the chickens had more patience, they may have been given the whole thing at once. But it doesn't work like this in this world. You might be given your sustenance all at once. You become multimillionaire suddenly, supposedly. Or Allah scatters that sustenance across the breadth of your life, and you just have to work hard to get it. But as Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, nobody leaves this world until they have been given the last portion of sustenance which Allah had decreed for them. Like, think of the chickens. You will get it. The question is, when do I get it and how quick? And that's up to Allah Azza wa Jal. But your job and my job is to seek it. Go and look for it. Now, if the chickens decide to protest and say, well, you know what, if you don't bring it to me in a bowl, I'm not moving. I'm not going to go and eat it. And you squander that wealth in the way that pleases you, but you should use it in ways that are good. Equally, Allah has given us this body. He owns this body, but He has given us a joint ownership where you can dispose of this body in ways that are useful to help other people, such as donating blood or plasma or whatever, but with the conditions that I have mentioned. As for a person who is deceased, then they can donate any of their organs or any of their limbs if it is going to help somebody else because they are deceased and that's not going to impact them, they're dead. But again, it should be with the permission of the person himself. He should have given permission or the permission of his family and so forth. So that is, in a nutshell, the answer to that.
How about the
Yeah.
Yeah, but in Australia, I think.
So, right, thank you.
Most of the capsules are overly not.
Right, thank you.
I'm not sure.
Always try to take medicine. So, and there is a difference of opinion among the scholars on gelatin anyway. They say because by the time it gets through all this processing, chemical processing and so forth, this initial substance, and that is the animal product from which it has been derived, is not there anymore. So there are people who say that, but if you're to take the precautionary measure and assume that gelatin is not allowed, then there are many halal medical options or medicines. In the absence of an alternative, if there is truly no alternative, and this is the only medicine that is prescribed, right, and there is no other option, then it is permitted to take it if medical doctor says that you need that. Because preservation of health, preservation of life is one of the highest objectives of Sharia. And the prohibited becomes permitted in times of necessity. الضرورة تبيح المحظورات. That which is prohibited in the first instance becomes lawful in times of necessity. But you don't decide for yourself what's necessity. If a medical doctor in this case says it's necessary for you to take this medicine and there is no alternative, then you take it. But if it's not necessary and you can do without it, or you can seek other medicine, then you go for the other medicine. Right? Is that clear? There are sometimes, or sometimes there may be alternative medicine. By alternative, I don't mean necessarily naturopathic medicine. I mean within still the legal drug, but also naturopathic medicine is also fine as long as you're comfortable with it. But let's say you have an option of 2 capsules. One is gelatin, one is non-gelatin. But the doctors unanimously tell you this is more effective, this is better for you, and if you were to take the one with gelatin, it'll have less complications for your case. If you were to take the other option, it'll have more complications. Then you take the one that has the capsules based on the view of the medical doctor in this case. A fatwa, that's why a legal verdict on medical issues cannot be taken by a scholar by himself. He should consult with experts in the field, medical experts in the field, because they know that field. That's why, for example, in cases of abortion, a woman should not undertake abortion unless the medical view of 2 or 3 medical experts, preferably Muslims, who say categorically that going ahead with this pregnancy is going to cause, for example, death to the mother, or it's going to cause these complications, and we advise that you abort the child. Based on this medical advice, the Imam or the Mufti would listen to that and give a verdict accordingly. Okay? Anyone else? Any other questions? Yes, sister.
Before you mentioned there was 4 female Hafidhs.
Yes, I meant 4 people, including Al-Khidr. So 3 women and Al-Khidr. That's what I meant.
Just the confusion.
It was I confused myself and confused you. So it is 4 people, 3 women and 1 man, Al-Khidr, about whom there is a difference of opinion as whether he was a prophet, and As-Suyuti and others say he was. Or they say at least it's mawqufun alayhi, meaning we think they were, but we're not sure.
Why have we never heard about, so, okay, all the prophets that we know, they're all messengers as well.
Yes,
But these 4 people, 3,
they're not messengers.
yep, they're non-messengers, but they're prophets. Why have we never heard about them?
Why haven't you heard about them? I'm not sure. Yeah.
I mean,
Why don't people talk about it? Or I really don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, in this khutbah, for example, just yesterday I spoke about Asiya. I did talk about her, and we're talking about women in Islam. You were there? Right. And that a person is not seen better or less because he's man or she's a woman. It's nothing to do with gender. Allah doesn't care about gender, right, or color or race. He doesn't care about that. Allah cares about what's in the heart and actions. And that's why I said one woman can be better than 1,000,000 men. And the opposite is true also. And of these women was Asya, because of her unbelievable stance against one of the world's most tyrannical rulers, Fir'aun. So I'm sure scholars talk about them, but maybe you didn't have the fortune of listening to it, perhaps. Inshallah, maybe we can dedicate some time to talk about them. Yes, please.
You mentioned about a person who will not die until he consumes his last.
Right, yes.
That risk, portion of risk, might vary, right? It's not fixed. If the person is idle and lazy, it doesn't work, he'll have certain kind of risk. And the person who works hard or like goes to university, gets degrees and have a better job will have a different kind of risk, right?
Correct. And the opposite is true. A person who could be sitting doing nothing and inherit millions of dollars in that way, this is where qadar comes in, subhanallah. It doesn't mean we sit idle, because Allah doesn't like that, nor His Prophet ﷺ. When Umar radiallahu anhu was in the masjid, and he used to see 2 or 3 young men always sitting in the corner doing nothing, just in the masjid. He said, what do they do? He says, they don't do anything, they don't work. So he went to them, and Umar, was a very strong person. He said, why do you work? They said, no. Why not? They said, we rely on Allah. So he took he's got a stick. He said, get up and work, Allah. He says, the sky does not rain gold or silver. Right, so you work. What Allah gives you is up to Allah. He says you work, but Allah knows better when to give and how much to give. But the universal laws that Allah has placed in this world is that if you work, inshallah ta'ala, you will get. And whatever you get is meant to be for you anyway. And people who don't work, they're not going to get. But there can be exceptions to that rule. A person inherits wealth and decides, I'm not going to do anything. Really. Or somebody, how many people that certainly I know people who went through university and they got degrees in a certain specialization and they never worked in that specialization. They went and started a Hajj travel group and got so much money from that, for example. So we do our best, but I see your point. A man came to the Prophet ﷺ complaining, because we have to look at it always in both ways, right? The rule is that you should work hard. You should try your best. And as I said, the outcome is with Allah Ta'ala. So there were 2 brothers during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. One who was always with the Prophet, but he wasn't idle. He was learning deen all the time from the Prophet. And his brother was the one working hard all the time, spending on his other brother. So the one who was working came to complain to the Prophet about his brother who's not working but studying deen. He wasn't just sitting playing video games. Not that they had video games, but so he said to the Prophet, I'm working all day and my brother is doing nothing. He says, maybe Allah is giving you rizq because of him. Right? But he doesn't know that. And you don't go and say to your brother now, you go and work, I'll read Quran all day because maybe Allah will give you rizq because of me. We don't know that. You see, that's a Prophet telling that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he was informed that. For us, we do our best, but in order not to become disappointed, and we shouldn't be disappointed with the qadr of Allah, if you truly know Allah, so as not to become disappointed, take all the necessary means, have true reliance on Allah, and say whatever comes, I am happy with it. And whatever happens, happens. Because in this world, we're not going to get everything we want. It's not meant to be like that. Everything you want, you'll get in Jannah only. Inshallah. Other questions? Yes?
What's the view of our religion regarding taking life support of a terminally ill person?
Right. So if the medical doctors decide that now they talk about the brain cell, right? And that if that is dead and the person is medically dead, then they can't take the life support off if they have the choice to. If, again, the person is considered brain dead, and that there is no chance of living. But if he's not considered medically dead, but he or she are in a coma, a serious coma, and there's serious complications, but there is the chance that they may survive, then you don't take the life support off. Because again, Allah Ta'ala could change the circumstances. And we know the story. Remember the story of the young boy in Brisbane? So the father whom I knew called me and he said, his son was maybe 5, drowned in the swimming pool. And by the time the ambulance got to him, he was already blue, right? And when he was taken to the hospital, he wasn't breathing. They tried to resuscitate him. They put him in intensive care unit. And the medical doctors sometimes also push because of money and space and beds. And so they said, listen, there's no hope. Next to him was another young boy who also had drowned and who was also in the same condition, a different family, not a Muslim family. And so I went to visit this young boy, and he was, in serious coma, and the doctors were saying there's no chance, that's it. And so the man wanted to know, the family wanted to know, what do we do? Do we take the life support system off? And of course, it's a difficult decision. You can't just say yes or no. So I went back and I asked few ulama, few scholars, and we talked about it, and we looked at what the big scholars say about this issue, and we went back to the doctors and we had a meeting with them. They said technically he's not dead. So he's not brain dead yet. In other words, there is a chance, but we don't know that chance. So therefore, we argued that don't take the life machine off. The family next to us decided to take the life support off, and the boy died. And in this case, they said, no, don't take the life support off. And they kept playing Quran in the boy's ear, etc. Anyway, and I visited a few times, and the boy was in a coma. Months later, I got a phone call, and I went to visit the father in his house, actually, not knowing what had happened. I didn't follow up. And I was sitting in the living room and, talking, and this young boy comes running and sat on my lap and da-da-da, and went. And then the father said, do you know who that was? I said, no. He said, that's the same boy. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, what happened? He said, months after months, the toe moved. And they said, oh, there is a sign. And so they called him Miracle Boy at the hospital that day, or then, because he came through it. Now, he was slightly damaged, slightly brain damaged, but not too much. But such a beautiful young boy. And every time I went for Jum'ah Salah, he's there with his father, and he's got a biggest smile, and So, you get my point. So yes, it's allowed, but we shouldn't rush. We should make sure that we know why we are making the decision and when not to make that decision. So that's a real example he's still alive, mashallah, the boy, and he's growing, yeah.
Let's continue with brother's question about the jalebi. In terms of food, we know that different flavors are used, and in default cases, in most of the cases, alcohol is used as a solvent because it's known as flavor enhancing. So typically we avoid those foods, but even if it's vegetarian versus vegan flavor, because there's no source of it, natural flavors of flavor, we generally avoid that. So is it the right thing to avoid that?
Okay. It is the best thing to avoid. دع ما يريبك لما لا يريبك. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, leave that which is doubtful to that which is not doubtful. If in doubt, always leave it. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, halal is clear and haram is clear, and between them are gray matters. Avoid them. So if in doubt, just don't go for it. However, we do need to understand that when we speak about alcohol, like the alcohol in perfume, for example, people ask that question also, is perfume, alcohol-based perfume allowed or not? And the dominant view among scholars is that alcohol, if it's chemically produced alcohol, then it's not the same alcohol that intoxicates. We're talking about two different things here. There is the chemically based alcohol. That's a chemical compound. known as alcohol, that if used in things like perfume or if used in food, then that is not a problem in itself because it is not napak, najis, impure. Because it's not the alcohol that was used through fermentation or that came about through fermentation and became intoxicant, right? And so the alcohol that is in perfume or alcohol similar to that in perfume is, if found in anything else, then that is not a problem because it's not the intoxicant. Now, if you're talking about intoxicant like wine, red wine, or I don't know the types of wines, that's the only wine I know, red wine. Let's stop there. Red wine, yes, I know something about wine. Sometimes they add it in food. When you go to a restaurant, they cook it and they say it evaporates, and that's not true. Now, I used to even think that it evaporates, or most of it evaporates, but now scientifically, there was a whole program on this, 95% of the alcohol added, the intoxicant alcohol, the wine, and the added to food actually doesn't evaporate, and 95% of it also remains in the food, and so it is not allowed to eat. Because that alcohol is the alcohol that intoxicates. Khamr, intoxicant. So always we need to make a distinction between the chemical compound known as alcohol and the intoxicants such as beer. I know Forex also. Oh, yes. But that's one, Forex, because Brisbane, that's it, Forex, right? This type of stuff, this type of alcohol is not permitted to drink or to add to any of our food. Can we call it a day? Oh, yes, تفضل.
Just a quick one, I guess, going back to the
Topic.
this discussion around causality and I mean in the physical world that we're living in, but actually things act on by themselves by the laws of physics and laws of the universe. Or I mean, for example, in the Quran, Allah is telling us on so many occasions that He's moving the clouds to an end and very training to bring life back into a good land. Is that like literally or is that meant in the bigger picture of the laws of physics?
The bigger picture of the laws of physics, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created these laws so that He can regulate this universe. So He is the ultimate controller and the ultimate creator of these things. But ma'adallah, Allah is not physically moving these clouds or these atoms, but Allah Ta'ala is the one who gives command to these natural phenomena to do what they are meant to do. And He has created those laws of physics or the laws of the universe, such as the laws of gravity, for example, to do the work that they were ordered and created to do. For example, Allah Ta'ala tells us there is not a leaf that falls off any tree, but He knows of it and does not fall without His command and His knowledge. And He knows when it falls, where it falls, and how many twirls it makes in the air before it reaches the ground. That's in the grand scheme of the picture. So Allah Ta'ala controls events at the micro level and the macro level also. And this is the difference that Muslims had with Greek philosophers. Where Greek philosophers used to argue that Allah Ta'ala only controls the world at the macro level and does not get involved at the micro level. And this is when Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi came and debunked that when he wrote his Tahafut al-Falasifa, the incoherence of the philosophers. And he says Allah Ta'ala does both. He is in control of both. He knows the macro and the micro. And created laws which are subjugated to His will and command to do what needs to be done. Okay. But He's the ultimate cause of all causes. Allah Ta'ala al-awwal bila bidayah. He's the first without beginning and the last without end. And He is the first cause. And nothing emerges, nothing happens without His being given the permission and the knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We done? Okay, Jazakumullah khaira. Just as a reminder, no lesson next week. because of that event that's happening at the convention center, but we resume the following Saturday inshallah ta'ala. جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
بالعلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.